In line with this, we have our next session, and of course, simply titled Invest. To begin this session, it is with pleasure that I invite Mr. Adnan Amin. He is the Director General of IRENA to deliver his keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with pleasure that I invite Mr. Amin up on stage. With a round of applause, please.
Thank you. Good to see you again. Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's such a pleasure to be back here in Singapore for the Singapore International Energy Week. It's been a number of years I've been coming, and every year I come, the forum becomes more and more significant, the participation deepens, and this is becoming rapidly one of the premier energy fora in the region. I'm delighted to be back. But this year, the Singapore International Energy Week is particularly important as it is being held in conjunction with the 36th ASEAN Ministers on Energy meeting. And we will, of course, have IRENA's 4th International Off-Grid Renewable Energy Conference and exhibition later on. And I'm particularly happy to see that Invest is one of the 3 key themes of this year's session, given its centrality to accelerating the global energy transformation. And this transformation is unfolding as we speak. The cost of renewables has continuously been declining. The cost of electricity from solar PV has fallen by as much as 73% since 2010, and the cost of wind turbines by around 30% during that same period. Enabling solutions are witnessing similar trends. Our latest report on battery storage shows that by 2030, total installed costs, both for stationary and mobile applications, could fall between 50 and 60%, and this will dramatically change the landscape of energy. These developments have made possible the addition of 168 gigawatts of global renewable energy generation capacity in 2017, making it the 5th consecutive year where renewable energy outpaced the growth of all other electricity sources, accounting for around $260 billion of investment in 2017. It has become routine to look around different markets in the world and to see solar PV and wind generating power at below $0.04 a kilowatt hour, making it competitive with any other source. But this transition is nowhere more evident than here in Asia, a continent leading the way with the largest renewable energy market in the world. Southeast Asia, in particular, has emerged as one of the world's fastest-growing regional economies. Renewable energy will be a key in sustaining this growing energy demand while securing considerable socioeconomic and environmental benefits for the region. ASEAN has huge renewable energy potential, and all countries actively tapping this immense opportunity. ASEAN has set an ambitious aspirational target of 23% of primary energy supply coming from renewables by 2025. The adoption of such a target, combined with efforts to reduce carbon emissions to meet the objectives of the 2015 Paris Agreement, signal the region's commitment to transforming the energy sector. IRENA has been supporting the region's efforts to achieve these goals. Our collaboration has resulted in assessment of the potential of renewable energy at the country and regional levels, as well as in expert analysis of market conditions, technological innovation, financial and policy frameworks required to achieve these goals. The signing of the Memorandum of Understanding this morning and the adoption of the action plan between ASEAN member states and IRENA today takes our partnership to the next level and reflects IRENA's strong commitment to work with the region on energy transformation. Although much progress has been made, there is an urgent need to further scale up renewable energy deployment if we are serious about tackling the challenges posed by climate change. As the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, recently reported, we have only about 12 years left to take action to keep global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees of pre-industrial levels. IRENA's Global Energy Transformation Roadmap to 2050 estimates that renewables and energy efficiency together can provide over 90% of the energy-related CO2 emission reductions required to keep global temperature rise to 2 degrees Celsius. This would require a share of 2/3 renewables in total final energy consumption by 2050. A deployment of renewables and energy efficiency solutions on this scale would, from our microeconomic analysis, boost global GDP by over 50 trillion jobs, creating 11 million additional jobs and a host of other social, economic, and environmental benefits. We believe that given the rapid innovation and strong business case for renewables today, this is an achievable target. Ladies and gentlemen, if we want to reap these benefits, we have to start sowing the seeds today. And this begins with investment. Between 2006 and 2016, nearly $27 billion was cumulatively invested in renewable energy in Southeast Asia. However, there is a need to scale up investment well beyond these levels. Analysts in IRENA and the ASEAN Center for Energy shows that $290 billion of total investment is required by 2025 for Southeast Asia to reach its regional target, signaling annual investment to be scaled up to around $27 billion, which is almost a tenfold increase from the current level. Reaching this level requires targeted efforts to focus on improving project readiness, facilitating access to finance, broadening the range of financing instruments deployed, including risk mitigation instruments, as well as in continued strengthening of legal, institutional, and administrative frameworks. Scaling up investments in renewables can be unlocked by using public finance to leverage private sector investment. This can be done by improving early-stage project risks, liquidity, currency and credit risks, and by helping design capital market vehicles to attract investors. We see movement in the right direction in Southeast Asia, for example, with the World Bank Group's $650 million geothermal resource risk mitigation facility in Indonesia, which aims to mitigate exploration risks, bridge financing gaps, and leverage $4 billion of capital from the private sector. On a global level, a risk mitigation facility that would cover and pool risks not easily borne by mainstream investors would be a promising avenue for attracting large-scale capital providers. Green bonds are another promising example from the region. GuarantCo, a public finance institution providing credit guarantees for infrastructure projects, recently helped launch the first 10-year local currency green bond in Southeast Asia, proceeds from which will support renewable energy projects in the Philippines. This success is part of a burgeoning green bond market in the region, coming on top of Malaysia's launch of the first ever green Islamic or Sukuk bond in 2017 worth $755 million, and Indonesia's first sovereign green Sukuk bond worth $1.25 billion issued earlier this year. On the national level, there is a need for dedicated financing vehicles, such as green investment banks, and the region has institutions, however, where challenges exist with their capacity and risk appetite to finance renewable energy projects. Providing concessional financing, capacity building support, and risk guarantees to these institutions can enhance the availability of capital, lending capacity, and reduce risk. To support such developments, IRENA has been engaging with governments, capital providers, and industry stakeholders to examine the current policy and financial landscape in the renewable energy sector, to identify bottlenecks, and to highlight practical steps to address them through a sharing of experiences and best practices. IRENA has also developed a range of online tools and platforms that address the lack of deal flow in renewables and connect industry stakeholders. Under the IRENA project facilitation approach, IRENA's Global Atlas supports resource assessment to help the identification of suitable project sites, while the Project Navigator provides comprehensive guidance for the development of bankable renewable energy projects. IRENA's Sustainable Energy Marketplace is a matchmaking platform to connect project developers, financiers, and other stakeholders, and this is beginning to make a real impact in terms of project facilitation in many markets around the world. It's encouraging to see corporations and non-energy companies also turning to renewable energy to power their businesses. The IRENA Corporate Sourcing Report, the first global comprehensive study of industry and market trends to corporate sourcing, shows that corporations from a wide range of sectors in 75 countries are already procuring or self-generating renewable energy. And there is rising demand for renewable electricity among companies headquartered in the Asia-Pacific region. Few corporate procurements have been made so far, however, but just last month, Sembcorp Industries here in Singapore signed a 20-year deal with Facebook to provide it with power sourced from a 50-megawatt solar panel facility from around 900 rooftops in this land-scarce island. A remarkable project. And Facebook is one of those, together with Apple and other major technology companies, which are going 100% renewable in their procurement policies. This region also has high potential, which can be unlocked through the right regulatory framework and government's motivation to incorporate the potential of corporate sourcing in energy strategies and policies. Ladies and gentlemen, investing in renewables pays off for governments, for business, and for people. We have seen this around the world. The economic, social, and environmental benefits they bring are immense. If we use public money wisely and ensure attractive enabling environments for private investments, renewables will be a key factor in sustaining the economic growth of ASEAN in the future. There's no shortage of capital or willingness in capital markets if we get this formula right. Let's not miss this outstanding opportunity for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Amin, may I invite you to take a seat right here as we now will move on with the panel discussion. It is with pleasure that I invite the moderator for this session, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO of Clifford Capital, Mr. Clive Kerner. Up on stage, please. Let's welcome him with a round of applause, shall we? Following him, the panelists are His Excellency U Win Khaing, Union Minister for Electricity and Energy, Myanmar. His Excellency Dr. Arcandra Tahar, Vice Minister for Energy and Mineral Resources, Indonesia. Bambang Susantono, Vice President, Knowledge Management and Sustainable Development, Asian Development Bank. And finally, Ditlev Engel, CEO, DNV GL Energy. Now let's welcome our panelists up on stage, please. As we have in the earlier segment, ladies and gentlemen, a reminder to ensure that you have your questions posed in Pigeonhole Live. As well, we had a question live just now as well. We like that, so we just raise your hands if you do have any queries along the way as well. Okay, looks like everyone is good and settled in. Mr. Kerner, I'm going to hand over the fort to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to have been invited to act as a moderator for this panel. We have, as you can see, some very distinguished guests, and I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting discussion. Just before we get going, I have been told that we need to finish this panel at 12:45 on the dot, so we don't have a lot of time. So if I may, I'll get straight into it. I'll take the subject matter invest as read. I think everybody is familiar with the issues that we're going to be discussing today. The panelists have been introduced. So what I'd like to do to start with is to invite each of the panelists just to spend a couple of minutes talking about their perspectives on the invest topic today. And then after that, we can drill down into some more questions. And we'll excuse Mr. Amin, who's already given a fantastic opening address. And I think that really does set the scene very well for some really very relevant discussion topics today. And I think it's one really noteworthy point that came out was the addition of 168 gigawatts of renewable energy in 2017. So this really is something that is building momentum now. So anyway, if I may, I'll turn first to His Excellency Ewing Kai, who is the Union Minister for Electricity and Energy in Myanmar, a market obviously that is opening up now. There is a huge energy demand. And Your Excellency, perhaps I could just ask you to say a few words to introduce the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Myanmar is a country which can be called one of the last frontiers. And when we talk about invest, there's a lot of investment that can be done in our country because we have almost nothing yet. So we need to fill and invest in basically in our critical infrastructures. For example, the road and communications, and as a Minister for Electricity and Energy in these two sectors, for the electricity and energy sectors, there's a lot of potential for investment in that area. And because this is an energy meeting, I can tell you that we have a lot of natural resources, especially in the renewable side. For example, hydropower. It's well known that we have 100,000 megawatts potential, of which 40,000 megawatt is quick harvest type of hydropower. And we have an enormous source of potential for solar and also for wind. Considering also, because as an agriculture country, biomass also plays a very important role for resource for renewables. So recognizing that, we as a government, new government, has formed a national steering committee for renewable energy, which has never been done before. And it has assigned me as the chairperson of that renewable steering committee. So that will be the committee which will lead Myanmar into the renewable energy era. While we are looking, of course, into hydropower, which we have a lot, we are focusing on solar energy as a quick win. And we already have started a project for a country like Myanmar. We start off with a solar plant of 40 megawatt. So we didn't start from 1, 2, 3 megawatt. We start off with a 40 megawatt, and we have about another 400 megawatt of solar in the pipeline. So looking at that, you can see which direction we are going. So hydropower, solar on the renewable energy side. But we are blessed with abundant gas fields also. So for that also, we are having significant amount of gas discoveries in my country. Recently, we announced the commercial discovery of the A6 block. And these are future blocks where we will get our future gas. But while it takes some time, while we are developing these gas sources, we are using LNG as an intermediate or a medium resource. And I'm very pleased to hear this morning that LNG is catching up. But for a country like Myanmar, to go into LNG, it's a very jump. It's a massive jump for us because we have nothing. But I promise our people that we will provide another 3,000 megawatts of power. But I will use LNG for that. So right now we are in the LNG market, and we place these plants in areas that will be springboard for future development in these areas. So all in all, in my opening, I like to say that we are a country open to investment, and enabling environment is being created by having revamping and renewing our investment laws to make it very easy for investors. We've rewritten a 100-year-old Company Act so that we have a new Company Act law which allows foreigners to invest in local companies up to 35%, and other things that will enable and make the investor-friendly type of climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Well, very interesting and clearly a huge opportunity, and I think encouraging to hear that such a considered and methodical approach is being taken to attracting private sector investment in particular. So thank you very much for those comments. I'll turn now, if I may, to His Excellency Dr. Arcandra Tahar, who is the Vice Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources in Indonesia. Dr. Tahar, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you, moderator. Please allow me to speak about the economic growth first, environment sustainability. Our country need to achieve a certain level of the economic growth, let's say 5%. While when we need to achieve a certain level of the economic growth, we need to provide cheap energy for the industry and for our people. Here's the dilemma. What is the source of cheap energy? The source of the cheap energy right now, or we can say the affordable energy, is fossil fuel. We have abundant fossil fuel. Used to be the net exporting country, but right now it's a net importing country. In the meantime, for the environment sustainability, we need to change or to shift from the fossil fuel into renewable energy. The question is, with a certain level of economic growth that we want to achieve, can we achieve it through the renewable energy? This is a big challenge. Yes, we can say that, let's say we're going to use the coal power plant. It's affordable, the cost is good for our country. However, how about the environmental quality? You may think about, can you use the clean energy for the coal power plant? Yes, every technology, SOx, NOx, or heavy particle will increase your energy cost at least 1 cent per each. So if you use the clean coal technology, at least you increase 3 cents per kilowatt hour of your cost of energy. That's our first challenge. The second challenge is the renewable energy. What is the renewable energy cost in Indonesia? We have a challenge in terms of the commercial. The cost of production sometimes is more than the cost of the selling price to the people. The second challenge is the financial. In terms of, if you use the local bank, for example, the interest rate could be 10 to 11%. If you want to achieve your business with internal rate of return 14-15%, 4% spread is not good enough for development of renewable energy. And the next one is about the technical challenge. We don't have any smart grid and smart meter yet. We're going to go to the area. However, right now, introduce more or big number of intermittent solar PV or renewable energy into our grid system is quite challenging. And the next challenge that we have in terms of a peak load. In other country, let's say in Singapore, I don't know, could be, the peak load is during a day time. In most of our city, the peak load is during night time. So using the solar PV, it will help, but it's not will help a lot because in terms of the peak load. What is the next challenge that we have? Land clearance. Sometimes in some areas, it's difficult to get a big chunk of land that can be used for the renewable energy. And the last challenge that we're having right now in terms of renewable energy is the quality of the natural resources itself. In one example, solar PV, our capacity factor is only 18%, compared to in Middle East, it could be more than 24%. Yeah. So our quality of the sun is 30% less than compared to other countries. Yes, we can use a solar PV, but the cost could be higher than other countries. Can we achieve the cost of solar PV less than 6 cents per kilowatt hour? Someday, yes, but right now it's difficult. Next time, when we have solutions in terms of commercial, financial, technical, land clearance, the peak load, yeah, and the quality, we cannot solve the quality of the sun. If at some point we can find any solutions through invest, innovate, and integrate, that's what we would like to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I mean, clearly Indonesia has huge demand for new energy, 35 gigawatt program. And I think, as you say, the challenge is balancing the transition towards renewables where you've got an abundance of other thermal resource at the same time. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'll turn next to Mr. Bambang Susantono, who is the Vice President, Knowledge Management and Sustainable Development at the Asian Development Bank. Bambang, would you like to say a few words? Thank you.
Thank you. I just have 3 points for my opening. First one is about our operations in energy and renewable energy related fields. ADB is serving 4.5 billion people in Asia Pacific. And last year, our operation is about 32 billion. And of the 32 billion operation, energy is about 1/3 of that, so about 10 billion, roughly. Right? So we consider that in this region, there is still energy poverty for about 430 million people that don't have access to energy.
Yep.
So that is why our priority for energy sector are in three areas. The first one, of course, the access to energy. I think the energy for all will be one of the high in our agenda. Second one is energy efficiency, and the third one, of course, the renewable energy. So these 3 in 1 is our energy operations. We also, in our operation, related closely between energy and climate change. We have a target in 2020 to have $6 billion our own resources. Again, this is not including the co-financing. $6 billion has to be from our own resources that are dedicated to climate financing. And for this 6 billion, 4 billion is mitigations, 2 billion is adaptations, and half of this 6 billion will be coming from energy sectors. Yeah. We just have a new strategy 2030. We set out more ambitious target until 2030. In that case, $80 billion will be mobilized for our energy operations, right? And on the climate change sector, also very close because 75% of our operation has to be climate financing related. So that is our own sort of like operation. Yep. And we witness in our operations that there are at least 3 areas that now emerging as one sort of like strong trend. The first one is on the generation side, because we witnessed that the distributed renewable energy going to more on the, for example, the solar rooftop, the mini grids and stuff like that. On the transmission and distribution, we witness also that smart grid system with the energy storage is one area that being oftenly request assistance from us, from our member countries. And on the efficiency, the end-use efficiency with the demand side response, the use of digital technology, for example, is also one very strong demand that's coming from our member countries. So what's the role of ADB in this case? For the conventional project, I think that we do business as we did before. Of course, we're adding more on the IT system and stuff like that. But for the new kind of technology, especially in the renewable area, there is some element of perceived risk that's still there, right? So our sort of like approach in this situation is that we do what we call the 3D. First D is to deploy the new kind of technology, for example, climate smart agriculture, smart metering, or perhaps the smart grid and stuff like that, and then demonstrate. The second D is to demonstrate. And then if we success with one of the project, then we will disseminate or sharing the knowledge for other members in the region. So I think that I will stop there.
Thank you very much. And I think clearly it's very clear that the ADB has a huge role to play in supporting the development of new energy in Asia, and in particular the transition towards renewables. So thank you for that. So I'll turn now to Mr. Ditlev Engel, who is the CEO of DNV-GL. DNV is a global quality assurance and risk management company, provides independent advisory services to the maritime, oil and gas, power and renewables industries. So good to see you today, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I think on the topic of investment, I think there are two things that people ask themselves. First, do I have the money? Is the money available?
Yep.
Second question would be, what is the future outlook for what I'm going to invest in? So therefore, let me try to give kind of from our perspective on technology, not just what technologies cost today, but also what they're going to cost in the future, which of course is very important also in the market that the investments are going into. So if we look at our daily life at DNV-GL, we see a tremendous amount of interest for people who want to invest into the renewable sector, also in this part of the world. But what they are trying to find out, what are the future policies that is going to drive this? And a few years ago, they were also asking us, what will the cost of the technology be, and is it reliable, et cetera, et cetera. But looking at also what was mentioned in the opening address here is that the cost of the future for renewables is not a problem at all. The only thing is that it will keep going down. Yeah. So the affordability is not the problem anymore. Neither is the predictability of the performance of the renewables. So I think that part is basically solved, and also when you start to add storage in, and we are seeing batteries coming down very fast. So the key question really is to release the investments that are there, is really to set up the framework of which this can operate. So I think the access to, and there will be a growth market in terms of consumption, as was just mentioned, lack of access. It's really about how do we, in a public-private partnership, make the money available. I find it very encouraging, was mentioned by IRENA, trying to make new ideas available, because that's really what we need. And then finally, we really need to get not just the consumers that we talk a lot about here, but also the companies, and the partnership between also players outside the energy sector, as was just mentioned with Facebook, is to bring them into the equation. Yeah. And they are going to be very important to drive this going forward in many countries as they want to invest, setting up manufacturing facilities, et cetera, in this part of the world to capture the growth of whatever business they're in. So conclusion is, I'm not worried about that we have all the components. It's all about our ability to put them rightly together, and I guess this is about integration that we talk about here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then the financing challenges in an environment where tariffs and prices are falling, I think that's a key consideration, so thank you. We haven't got much time left, so I'm not even sure there's time to ask everybody a question, but I'll kick off anyway. So perhaps you could keep your responses fairly brief so everybody has a chance to answer. So I'll start with Director General Amin. Perhaps you could just touch on where we are in the development of battery storage, and in terms of this becoming commercially viable, and what impact you think that will have on further growth in renewables.
This is going to be a very big area. You know, we have to take into account that the energy or electrical systems of the future are going to be different from today. We have the advent of the smart grid. People talk about, you know, intermittent or variable generation from different sources, and the issue of storage becomes central to that. And, you know, there are different types of storage, but battery storage is the key technology that everybody's looking at. And what we're seeing are very exciting developments that are ahead. We've already seen the cost of battery storage declining over the last few years. We've done a very in-depth study of the potential for cost decreases and efficiency increases in storage, both for stationary and mobile applications, electric vehicles in particular. That's going to be storage also, by the way, in a smart grid. We see that over the next decade, between a 50 and 60% decrease in prices for battery storage, bringing that into grid competitiveness within 5 or 6 years, which means that's going to be a game changer for balancing smart electrical grids in the future. Yep. And balancing intermittency from renewables. So I think it's going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, well, interesting to hear that it's coming quickly. So yeah, thank you. I'll turn to Minister Kai, and let's come back to the Myanmar situation, and I think the market was very encouraged to see the successful financing of the Mingyang IPP, being the first internationally financed IPP in Myanmar, incidentally with strong involvement from Singapore in terms of the sponsorship with Semcorp and the financing. So I think a lot of people see that as a template for the future. But also, investors continue to be concerned about how a robust and stable legal framework can be further refined and developed to support future concession-based financing, and including the legal framework and so on. So could you just say a few words about where you stand in developing that?
We have a very successful cooperation with a Singapore-based company called Semcorp, and we are generating 225 megawatts. It's a gas thermal CCGT plant. So this is not the first one. We are promoting such kind of investments, mostly on a PPP style modality, because we believe this one area is commercially feasible for the investor, and these are bankable projects. So being that, we are keen to promote these IPPs, especially for hydropower, for LNG, and for thermal gas. And of course, also for the solar power generation. So right now, I think I mentioned just now that we are commissioning a 40 megawatt solar plant. That is 100% privately invested. And I mentioned earlier also about another 3,000 megawatts I'm bringing in within the next 3 years. These are all LNGs, and these are all 100% IPPs.
Yep.
Meaning that we are giving messages out that it's okay to invest in our country.
Yes.
And we will have a win-win situation, negotiations on the tariffs, and also you mentioned rightly just now about the legalities and the governance. I mentioned just now also about the new MIC laws and also other barriers to removing the barriers. So especially in my department for electricity and energy, we are for reducing such barriers and be welcoming to investors for electricity and also for the energy side. We are floating bids by year end or early next year to open up our new blocks for offshore and onshore. So meaning that we are looking to every possible ways to get the energy security we need, more or less by using as much as possible what we have, our own resources such as hydropower, solar, and domestic gas, but also having diversity in having an LNG and also interconnection power grids with our neighboring countries. So these are the way we are strategizing for the energy security and also for opening up the investments.
Okay.
So I myself will be the number one welcoming person for those who want to invest in the energy and the electricity sector. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and those are very positive signals for private investors and financiers, so thank you for that. Dr. Tahar, you're touching on the huge demand for more energy in Indonesia. At the moment, there's an abundance of coal, also trying to develop renewables, but in the middle you have gas. Could you say a few words about how you're proposing to develop the gas side of things, and in particular, would you be looking to import more gas or divert domestic gas for more power generation? And also, what role do you see in terms of mini LNG projects, and do you think they could become economically viable?
Well, in terms of gas, our policy is we're going to use as much as possible for the domestic use, if we have excess capacity, we're going to export it. Currently, we use gas for domestics around 60%, and 40% is for exporting. And how about for the future? Are we going to be net importing gas country? If we look at our gas balance, with the current demand, plus average the last 5 years of growth, it's about 1.1% growth. Up to 2027, we believe our domestic demands can be fulfilled by existing productions internally. However, if we assume the growth around 5.5%, in 2024, there is possibility that we're going to import a gas through LNG form. Is it how big the chance that we're going to be net importing gas? If we cannot find any affordable solutions or commercially viable solution for the development of giant field of Natuna, there is possibility that in 2024, with the growth 5.5%, we're going to be net importing gas country. However, if we have a growth, the last 5-year growth on average 1.1%, until 2027 and beyond, we're not going to be any net importing country.
Okay.
Related to the small LNG development, we encourage this type of development. Why? We are archipelago country. Mm-hmm. We need the small LNG type of development. But the problem is, again, I'm saying a problem again. The key game of the gas development is in infrastructure. If we don't have any infrastructures, regardless of the source of your gas, either from import or from domestic, you're not going to be able to supply at certain level of demand in each island. Yep. So, again, if we have a technology that can distribute the gas affordable with right technology and collaborate between technology provider and the government, it takes two to tango, the business community and the government. We are ready to create policy that can enhance or to expedite the process, how to make the small LNG plant to be affordable to our people.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would love to come back to Bambang and Mr. Engel with some questions, but I've just received a message, strict instructions, I'm afraid, that we need to wrap up. So this session, I'm afraid, was a little bit time constrained. Nevertheless, I think we've already seen some very valuable and useful contributions from our panelists. So we'll leave it there. I know that I'm standing between everybody and lunch. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you.